and Land Use Management Committee. We've been joined, I'm Councilmember Weezer. We've been joined by Councilmember Harris-Dawson and Councilmember Price. We will start today's meeting with the multiple agenda item comment cards, which are coming up just now. These are the comment cards for which people have signed to speak on more than one item. We take those up at the beginning of the meeting. And we have two speakers. First is Herman, and second is Puppet.
Planning's
Welcome.
oral status
Can you move the chair?
report.
see
By the
the
way,
clock.
just to remind the public that I filled out a card for every topic, including public comment, for the record. So now that I am on the oral status of the report relative to the ongoing development of cities, planning, bullshit. Yeah, just another work program and bullshit operations and other bullshit terms of interest have no irrelevance to our conversation for all you that are here today. So push for your plan. Then I'm going to go into item number 6, because 666 is Mr. Weezar's favorite number regarding CD11. Talking about environmental impact reports, non-negative declarations, and all this bullshit that doesn't really matter because Mr. Mott McDonald, you know, he's not representative by the city because the city just costs him more money like he does to any one of you here today. You know, just if you want to be a part of the program, you got to pay. Put an envelope, kick it under the table, and let Weezer take it and decide how he plans to allow the Los Angeles Planning Commission under the resolution a relative proposal and mobility element. And then, since my limited time of everything crunched together, which doesn't allow me to have a comprehensive conversation with the rest of you folks, let me go into item 8, because Mr. Koretz did a very nice gesture welcoming Pepita into City Hall this afternoon, and that's very commendable that you have elected officials actually talking to your service dog. Woof, woof. Shout out. So now that we're talking about the guidelines, Section 1, Class 3, Chapter 2, all this bullshit, you know, just listen to Paul Koretz. He'll pass it as long as you do what he's asking you so that the elderly and the homeless don't end up in the street. Thank you.
Puppet.
So again, thank you, you fat lazy pig, for being at the meeting today. You missed last week. So now, we turn to all the bullshit for today's meeting. Let's see. We don't bother to read the agenda. We don't need to. It's the same bullshit, different day. So number 9, okay, that will be sustained. Again, you have to pay off the councilman. That's Mike Bonin. Send your checks to Bonin, B-O-N-I-N, and you'll get your approval. Thank you. Number 8, that's Paul Koretz. And make your checks payable to Paul Koretz or his wonderful family, and you will receive your project permit adjustment. CD3, you want to pay off the councilman, that's Bob Blumenfield. Yes, or his lovely wife. You can make the checks payable to them. Usually in Woodland Hills, you can pay them off and get that project approved. And number 6, CD11, oh, Mike Bonin, a double. He's going to get a double payoff. Congratulations for the councilman. 5, we don't have a councilman to pay off. It's hereby denied with prejudice. 4 also is denied with prejudice. There's nobody to pay off. 3, nobody to pay off. 2, I'm trying to see. We're trying to get the money to the right people. Yes. So that's it. So remember, if you don't pay off the councilman or the planning director or building and safety, you will lose your appeal and finally to current price. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, with that, we'll now go over the consent calendar. Unless there are speaker cards, we'll place the items on consent. The first is item 2, which we will approve on consent with no objection. Item number 5, approve on consent without objection. 5, I have no cards.
So on item 5, Councilman,
Yes?
city attorney needs to be requested to prepare the ordinance.
Okay, we'll request the city attorney to prepare it.
And that, same for number 2, Councilman.
Okay, hold 1 second. So let's start all over on the, I was just handed a card that was turned in. Item number 2, we will approve on consent, and we will direct the city attorney
To prepare the ordinance.
to prepare the ordinance, okay? Item 7, we will approve on consent as well, without objection. Okay, so we could come back to the consent items that have cards. Item 4, we could call that to order, please.
Sure. Councilman, item 4 is a report from the city attorney. It's to add a definition of urban agriculture incentive zone and also to establish the urban agriculture incentive zone program as part of the administrative code.
Okay, Eric Ares, Brianna Hawkins, and Dorette Ragozine.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Eric Ares. I'm with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. I'm here to strongly urge you all to move ahead with the city attorney's proposed ordinance for the urban agricultural incentive zones. Just very briefly, this is sort of a no-brainer when it comes to revitalizing neighborhoods, when it comes to economic development, fighting hunger. I am a lifelong resident of South LA, areas that have been neglected, areas that are underutilized. It represents a unique and very strong opportunity to fight hunger, to push forward a policy that promotes economic development, to promote environmental sustainability, to promote green spaces. And so I really strongly urge all of you to please be bold, please move this ahead so we can get the Urban Agricultural Incentive Zone program off the ground and running as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Brianna Hawkins, Dorette Ragozine.
Hello, my name is Brianna Hawkins, and I'm Policy Director with the Los Angeles Food Policy Council. I'm also here to request that the Plum Committee support urban agriculture incentive zones. We want to express our gratitude to Councilmember Price's office for taking the lead on this initiative to ensure that the City of LA is able to take advantage of this momentous policy that allows property owners to benefit from having reduced property taxes by being able to lease their properties to urban growers for the purposes of urban agriculture. This increases access to healthy food for low-income communities. This reduces vacant property to minimize blight and nuisance activity. This promotes green space, which encourages environmental benefits as well as social capital, and it provides an opportunity for businesses, social enterprises, to be able to develop and take advantage of the increased access to land for the purposes of urban agriculture. So we're really grateful for this opportunity and hope that you can pass and support this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Dorette, Andrew Douglas, Cynthia Hubach, and Marlene Esquivel, our last speaker on this item. Go ahead, Ed.
Hi, my name is Dorette Ragusine. Thank you, ladies, gentlemen, and puppets. I'm actually one of the residents who will benefit from the UAIZ zone. I purchased an empty lot next to my home several years ago just to stop development in my neighborhood and particularly impacting me. And subsequently, I actually approached the LA Beekeeper Association to have a beekeeper manage hives on my property. I think it's a virtuous cycle. I provide an opportunity for somebody locally to make a business off an agricultural opportunity. I get free honey. And I also inspired my neighbors to also get beehives. And I also think it helps the neighborhood in maintaining green in an area where developers are constantly looking to build wall-to-wall properties. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Andrew Douglas, not here? Okay, Cynthia and Marlene?
Hi, thank you, council members. My name is Cynthia Hubach. I'm a co-chair of the LA Food Policy Council Urban Agriculture Working Group and a property owner in Elysian Valley. I have a small piece of land near the LA River, and I have essentially been embarking on what amounts to a test case study of the UAIZ. About 6 years ago, we started a small community garden on a quarter acre of land, which is right in the sweet spot of the UAIZ, and we turned what is a typical weed-choked dump, sort of ad hoc dumping ground graffiti area into a thriving community garden that serves 30 family members, provides food and recreation, fresh air to many community members. We're also a compost hub, so we've taken literally tons of food waste and garden scraps out of the waste stream and turned that into soil for our gardeners to use to grow more food. So it seems to me it's just an unmitigated good, and I encourage your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Marlene Esquivel?
Hi, my name is Marlene Esquivel. I'm here with the LA Food Policy Council. I'm a volunteer in the Agriculture Committee, and basically we urge you to pass the Urban Agriculture Initiative Zone because it helps communities, it helps connect people to nature. It basically like provides food and a connection to food, and it's like basically it helps communities have more cohesiveness, but it also provides like access to foods, especially in places that don't necessarily have access to fresh produce. So I urge you to push UAIZ. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, that concludes our public comment cards. And just for the public's notice, whenever we start an item, once we've called that item to order, the opportunity to submit cards for public speaking has ended. So if anybody submits cards after an item has started, you need to get those in before the item starts. On this item, are there any questions or comments? See none, we'll approve without objection and direct the city attorney to...
In this case, it's already been prepared, Councilman, so you'll approve the city attorney prepare ordinance.
We will approve the city attorney prepared ordinance, okay?
I've also been asked for the committee to make a finding that the project is exempt from CEQA under sections 15303 and 15304.
Okay, we'll incorporate that into the motion.
Thank you.
Any objections? Seeing no objections, so ordered. Okay, item number 6.
Councilman, under item 6, this is a report from the Planning Commission. It's a resolution and a general plan amendment to redesignate certain portions of streets in CD 11 from a collector to a local street.
Anthony Crump.
Good afternoon, Councilman. We ask for your permission to change the designation for Blanc Avenue from a collector street to a residential street, a regular street, in order to allow us to continue construction of the Southwestern Yard Maintenance Facility, which is part of the Crenshaw Lakes Transit Project.
That's what's in the report?
No, that's an added request, and I don't think at this point you can make that change.
Why not?
Adrian Corsani, City Attorney's Office. If it's a change to the proposed GPA, then the GPA will have to go back to the Commission for its consideration of the change.
Okay, is there someone from CD 11's office here that's familiar with this? Puppet, you familiar with this? I'm just joking. CD 11, back there? Yeah, do you guys have an opinion on this, or should we continue this to get a better handle on what's being proposed by Metro? LA County Metro is proposing a change.
Okay. This is Ezra Gale for Council District 11. This is a proposal we're fully in support of.
The proposal as written, or what Metro's requesting? And to staff, you're suggesting that if we make the change that Metro's requesting, this would have to go back?
Correct. It's a general plan amendment, and so the general plan amendment, if changed at all, has to return to the City Planning Commission.
Okay. Why don't we continue this for a week, if that's okay, with CD11 and Metro, and see what could be worked out, and come back to us next week.
Thank you.
And you see your options. We could either approve as is, or if we make the change that Metro's requesting, we'll remand it to the City-wide Planning Commission. Okay? Thank you. So we'll continue this item for the next regularly scheduled PLUM meeting, which is next week?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. And now moving to our regular agenda. Item number 1 is a report from Lisa Weber, our Deputy Planning Director.
Good afternoon, council members. We have no report today.
No report today. Thank you very much. Is there any cards on one? No cards on one. Okay, we'll receive and file item number 1. We will now move to item 8. If that could be read into the record, please.
Sure. Item 8, Councilman, are appeals, an appeal rather by Nicole Minor. This is from the action of the West LA APC, and this action is before you on a 245 motion.
Okay. Now, we have before us the appellant rep and the applicants. So the appellant representatives, Christina Kropp, and the appellant rep as well, Nicole Minor or Reiner. 5 minutes, or one of you could take 1 minute after that 5 minute, however you'd like to do that. And then the applicant also gets 5 minutes. Are you guys here? Okay, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. Good afternoon. And you are?
Christina Kropp of
Okay.
Luna and Glushon. I represent Ms. Nicole Minor, who resides at 10392 West Ashton Avenue,
Okay.
which is under consideration before you today. Like you said, she was the appellant to the West Los Angeles Area Planning Commission action, which brings this project before you. I'm going to leave the specific details about why this project poses adverse traffic and public safety issues to Ms. Minor and some of the neighbors here today. What I'd like to focus on more is what we think is kind of the inappropriate manner in which this project has been handled as it's gone up the chain through city planning and through the appeal process. I think that, as especially the committee members on this committee are aware, reasonable minds can differ as to the merits of any controversial land use matter, but there always has to be an objective manner of review. We have to be working off the same facts. I don't know that we've gotten to the point where we're all looking at alternative facts all the time. So the first version of this project was presented in 2013. In connection with that 2013 project, City Planning issued a mitigated negative declaration. In that mitigated negative declaration, they identified both aesthetic and biological impacts and identified mitigation measures to mitigate those impacts. In 2015, they issued the first addendum to that MND. Again, they found the same biological and aesthetic impacts. And again, they found mitigation measures to alleviate those impacts. In 2016, the applicant revised the project. Again, City Planning looked at it. Again, they found the same significant environmental impacts on aesthetics and on biological resources. They adopted that MND. They adopted those mitigation measures. And that's where things got a little bit interesting. In December of last year, the West Los Angeles Area Planning Commission found that notwithstanding the aesthetic and biological impacts, that planning had failed to adequately look at the traffic safety hazards posed by the project's tandem parking spaces backing into the alley behind the project. They asked planning to recirculate that MND and look at those impacts. That never happened. For whatever reason I can't explain to you today, planning instead decided they would issue a negative declaration and prepare a categorical exemption. Planning has absolutely no authority to take this action. Once environmental impacts are identified by the commissioners, the city decision makers, just like yourselves, planning has absolutely no authority to disregard these impacts. What they are basically saying is, you know, those aesthetic and biological and traffic impacts all the city decision makers are telling us are out there? We don't see them anymore. No one has a magic wand to take that type of action. And I know not everybody here is a CEQA expert, and people don't even like to hear about CEQA a lot, but I think everyone can understand that once you've identified environmental impacts, you can't all of a sudden say they no longer exist. You can't all of a sudden think that they just went away. And before I end my presentation and let Ms. Miner speak to you about the traffic, I'd just like to note we submitted to the file, if you want to look at it, an independent report created by Alan Rifkin, who until recently was the chief LA DOT Bureau of Planning and Land Use Development. His independent report tells you that the project will substantially increase transportation and traffic hazards into that adjacent alley. And his independent report tells you that the incremental effects of the parking configuration proposed are dangerous and that they have to be considered in an environmental impact report. Thank you. Can we stop so she could?
Sure.
Thank you.
Can you hold the clock, please? Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Nicole Miner. I'm here to represent the Devon Ashton community. It's an historic community that has been in existence and intact and pristine since the early 40s. And the Devon Ashton community opposes the project proposed for the 10390 Ashton building. The cumulative impact of traffic and narrow alleys will worsen an existing hazardous situation. On Monday, May 15, 2017, at about noon, an ambulance from LA Fire Department Station 71 on full siren backed into the alley at the Ashton opening to respond to an emergency mid-alley, and they're positioned so as to leave going forward. Tandem cars and additional garage population at the alley entrance would be a life and death hindrance for emergency vehicles. Here's an illustration of the ambulance that backed into the alley.
Thank you. You're entitled to one more minute, please.
Okay.
One more minute.
Chief Nutman of LAFD Station 71 is in accord with the community concerns about future congestion and gridlock in the Ashton Alley. This will be in writing when it goes through proper channels and rank within the LAFD. The Ashton Avenue opening cannot house double or more the amount of cars now contained in the existing garages, nor use the alley to switch around cars parked in tandem. No group or communal garages and no tandem parking exist on the entire community. The proposed project would utilize 50% of the substandard alley at the primary entrance to and exit from the garages and all the alley arteries. The opposite end of Ashton opening is 100 feet away with 90-degree blind turn, essentially a dead end, serving two long arteries of garages that enter and leave primarily at Ashton. It is essential that passage to this alley remain free-flowing and unimpaired, as its traffic committee study shows. The Survey LA report on the property that minimized the importance of the 10390 building did not have the City of Los Angeles' name attached to it.
Thank you very much. Your time is up.
Thank you, and thank you for supporting Paul Kortz's motion.
Thank you. The applicant, Robert M. and Majid Noel. Five minutes. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. This project had began in 2013 as a 6-unit building. We have, by right, the ability to build a 6-unit building here. It's zoned RD 1.5, but over the course of 3 years, and the community planning organization that exists in Westwood, which is the Westwood Design Review Board, we revised this project from 6 units down to 5 units. We changed the architectural design several times in response to the community. We met with the community in the church in Westwood. We listened to what they asked, and we revised it again and again. Eventually, we got to the point where we took our idea of building a 6-unit building on this property down to building 1 unit over the garage. And we did this because we were responsive to the community demands. Now, the issue here is that the person that you're hearing from, Nicole Miner, she's a tenant in this building. She lives there. And she has pushed this appeal over and over and over again because she's very involved with the city, to the point where it's almost absurd. There's no environmental issues here. And the reason that there's no environmental issues now is because the building, the garage that we are building a unit on top of, the garage is being demolished, and we're building a new garage on that exact same space. We're not coming out an inch and just putting a unit on top of it. That's all we're doing. This area is a historical area. This property, and by all means, I am not one of those people who believes that we should trash the city and all of our historical assets in the city and turn them into huge buildings. I don't believe that at all. But I think when you take down a garage that is in an alley behind the public view to build a unit on top of it, and also Survey LA did an issue here, and they looked at the historical assets here, and they said that this property in particular is a non-contributor to the historical resources in the area. So I'm not a destroy and create person here, but the problem is that we have revised and revised and revised. We got to the point where we revised this to the point where there were 2 tandem parking spaces. So there were 4 parking spaces that were tandem. And Nicole had a real issue with that. She said, well, if you have 2 tandem spaces, it's not going to work, it's going to cause traffic. So we actually went back to the drawing board in response to Nicole's requests during the Area Planning Commission meetings, and we moved the bicycle parking, and we knocked it down to 1 tandem spot. So everything will remain exactly as is, the footprint of the garage, all of it. We're just going to convert 1 parking space from a normal parking space to a 2 parking space situation. If we were to present this project to you today, we would have what's called a categorical exemption. We wouldn't even have to go through the MND process. We wouldn't even have to go through this. We would just apply for a permit and go through city planning and get a categorical exemption. The reason we have this whole situation that's been brought up here is because we originally started with a 6-unit building, and we knocked it down to 5, and then eventually to 1, and this whole situation. The MNDs that we did showed no impact once we knocked this down to a 1-unit building. It was not an issue. And the independent report that Nicole just spoke about and the attorney spoke about from Alan Rifkin, that independent report is based on the alley behind this property being substandard. And the issue is that the alley is not substandard. His entire report was based on that, and if you look at it, it's just not right. Nicole came here representing herself as a person who is representing the Devon-Ashton district, and I contend to you that she's not. She's representing her own interests as a tenant in the building who this unit will be directly in front of her. She tried to make issues about light studies and shadow studies and all these other things that were eventually addressed through the MND. And she is still fighting that we don't build this 1 unit in front of her in this property. It's ridiculous. Anywho, if you have any questions, the architect is here as well. You can feel free to ask him. He did all the revisions. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much. So the architect is Majid Noel.
Yeah, Majina.
Okay, 1 minute.
If you have any questions, I'm here to answer. I can answer later if later you have questions.
Okay,
I
thank
don't
you.
have nothing else to say.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, Stephen Resnick and Faisal Al-Sari from Council District 5.
Good afternoon, everyone. Stephen Resnick, President of the Westwood Homeowners Association. The Historic Resources Group, in a report commissioned by the property owner, said that the Devon-Ashton tract is one of the last intact collections of courtyard-oriented apartments dating from the 30s and 40s in Westwood. I submit that it'll no longer be intact if the garage is demolished and an apartment built on top of it, and no less again with tandem parking. The Devon-Ashton tract is a gem in the city of Los Angeles and in the Westwood community, and I believe, and community leaders believe, that this should be preserved intact without changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 1 second. No. Welcome.
Council members, good afternoon. Faisal Al-Sari on behalf of Councilmember Paul Koretz. Before you today is an opportunity to correct an APC determination in the Devon-Ashton Historic District. The current process, as you heard, to say the least, was a bit jumbled, and in order to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act, we respectfully ask this committee to reject both the negative declaration and the categorical exemption and require an EIR be done pursuant to the following items that are already on the record with the Planning Department. Item number 1, expert opinion and testimony of former LA City Transportation official Alan Rifkin. Item number 2, the prior issuance of an M&D by the City Planning Department. Item number 3, evidence and testimony provided by residents based on safety concerns of the alley that included time-stamped photos. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions or comments on this item? Puppet? Yeah. Thank you. We have before us a request that essentially CD5 is requesting an EAR for this project. We're going to continue to move this item in the process and move it to council without a recommendation. Is there any objections to that? So we'll move this item to council without a recommendation from this committee. Okay. So ordered. Item 9, can you read that in the record, please?
Sure. Item 9, Councilman, these are various appeals relative to the action that was taken as it relates to a density bonus case for 57 units in CD 11, which is inclusive of some very low income units for the project as well. And this project is a mixed use project on a 245 motion here as well.
Okay. So we will hear first from the appellant. How many appellants are there on this project?
Looks like
There's three.
Yeah, I only have one appellant's card, Douglas Karstens.
No, well, on record, there's a Robert and Kathy.
Okay, I only have one appellant card with me, so if any of the other appellants want to speak, please make sure that we have a card for you. And hold on for a second. We're going to listen first to Ezra Gale from Council District 11. They requested to speak first. Ezra Gale, welcome.
Thank you, council members.
Okay. Welcome.
Ezra Gale here on behalf of Councilman Mike Bonin. First and foremost, we want to thank folks from the Mar Vista Community Council and the hundreds of stakeholders that we heard from who worked and spent time on this project before you today. The councilman knows that all of those people dedicated time and greatly appreciates them engaging in a way to make their community better. A little bit of backstory. In 2014, in conjunction with the mayor, Councilman Bonin announced funding and resources through the Great Streets Initiative with the goal of fostering neighborhood gathering places and generating economic activity by revitalizing key community corridors. With a wide tree-lined medium and community-serving commercial uses intermixed with low-slung residential, Venice Boulevard has the intimate feel of a small-town Main Street, even as it serves as the major east-west artery for Mar Vista and the entire west side. As we move forward with the Great Streets Initiative, the neighborhood is looking forward to a revitalized Venice Boulevard with enhanced pedestrian features and community-serving retail. Certainly, appropriate development is part of this revitalization. In fact, Councilman Bonin agrees that Venice Boulevard, which is a transit corridor served by the Metro Rapid Bus, is an appropriate place for additional housing and supports mixed-use development along the Great Street. However, the project before you today, as proposed, is flawed, and we recommend that these flaws be addressed. The first critical issue is that the project's height and massing make it highly incompatible with the area and would be greatly out of character with the surrounding neighborhood. As the councilman has said from day one, the project would tower over Mar Vista and is simply too tall for the neighborhood. It would be one of the tallest buildings on all of Venice Boulevard, from downtown to the ocean, and again is completely incompatible with the Great Streets Initiative. The second critical issue is the project's use of at-grade parking. Given its strategic location along the Great Street, where pedestrian activation is so critical, any use of at-grade parking is inappropriate and should be discouraged. Again, let me reiterate myself, Councilman Bonin opposes the project as currently proposed and stands with our Mar Vista residents who are fighting against it. Now, the development team will tell you that state law strictly limits how much discretionary authority cities have in evaluating projects, such as this one, that take advantage of the state density bonus law. The development team will remind you that the state has given developers the ability, under certain circumstances, to get exemptions from city rules regarding density and parking. However, despite this, under our site plan review ordinance, the city has the authority to condition and/or modify a project in order to mitigate significant adverse effects of the development project on the environment and the surrounding area. Councilman Bonin believes that this authority extends to managing the overall height of the building, and he believes that in failing to do so, the Department of City Planning reads the site plan review ordinance too narrowly. The authority under site plan review is very clear and should neither be dismissed nor minimized. In fact, in order to approve this project, site plan review requires that the city find, quote, that the project's height will be compatible with the existing and future development on adjacent properties and neighboring properties. At 83 feet tall, 7-story building with at-grade parking is not compatible with any part of Mar Vista, let alone the Great Street stretch of Venice Boulevard, which hosts 1- and 2-story buildings. This project will be at least 3 times higher than most buildings in the area and more than 4 times as high as the adjacent 1- and 2-story structures. Therefore, Councilman Bonin recommends that the city utilize its site plan review authority to condition the project in a way that leads to a shorter building and thus one that is more compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. However, we recognize the developer's right under state law to 77 units on the site. As such, we propose the following 3 recommendations that, when taken together, will lower the building height while at the same time allowing the unit count requested and the floor area to remain. First, we recommend a condition such that no ceiling may be above the minimum required ceiling height as specified in our building code. Second, we recommend a condition that removes the project's top floor parapet features that do not provide habitable space. Those features are merely architectural in nature, and their removal will not reduce the corresponding dwelling units to an unallowable size. Third, we recommend a condition that requires all project parking be placed underground. Placing the parking below ground will free up at-grade floor space for people as opposed to cars. This project sits on the Great Street, and for that reason, ground-level parking should be prohibited. Implementing these 3 recommendations requires additional environmental analysis, specifically with regards to the additional excavation of earth to accommodate the underground parking. Because the 245 motion before you today requires acting in an expedited manner prior to June 9, and because, as the Department of City Planning can explain, this additional environmental analysis requires more time than allotted under Charter Section 245, Council District 11 requests that the committee recommend to Council a veto of CPC's decision to approve the project and remand it back to CPC for further action. We also request the Department of City Planning conduct the necessary additional environmental analysis related to the conditions proposed here so that when CPC reconsiders the project, it can also have an adequate environmental information to evaluate along with the recommended conditions. Importantly, we are not asking for the project's unit count to be reduced in any manner. These recommended conditions deal only with the project's significant impact on the surrounding community, and implementing them will allow the developer its requests under the state density bonus law. We believe that these actions, when applied together, will create a project that is more compatible with the surrounding community, while at the same time ensuring that the developer is able to build the allowable units under state law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question for staff, either the city attorney or the CLA. Should this committee entertain CD 11's recommendation to veto CPC and remand it for further action, would we also be required to adopt the changes made by, the requested changes made by CD 11 to the project, or we just remand it for further consideration by CPC?
Adrian Corsani, City Attorney's Office. It would just be a veto and remand. The requests that were made by CD 11 remain on the record and, you know, clearly can
They could be taken up by CPC?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Just being clear procedurally what we need to do. Okay, so we'll go now to the appellant, Ezra Gale. I'm sorry, just read CD 11's name. Douglas Karstens.
Good afternoon, Councilmember and honorable council members. My name is Douglas Karstens. I am here on behalf of the West Mar Vista Residents Association and the South Mar Vista Residents Association. We'd like to express our strong support for the recommendation by Mr. Gale and the council member's office for a veto and a remand to the CPC. We also do suggest that an environmental impact report is required to address traffic, fire, safety, aesthetics, wastewater, etc. But the veto and remand will suffice to get this back in front of CPC. The applicant has submitted a letter saying that the committee should not consider environmental review. We've submitted a letter just yesterday with copies across the desk here today, showing that there is no need to conduct adequate CEQA when an agency rejects a project. And we believe that the rejection through a veto and remand to CPC is fully supportable for the reasons that have been stated. The state law does not require or mandate that the city should violate its own site plan review ordinance. The site plan review ordinance does allow the conditioning of a project in the way that has been outlined by the council office. We believe there are more mitigation measures that are possibly necessary, but that can be taken care of at the Planning Commission on remand. So rather than make a long statement out of this, we fully and strongly support what the council office is asking, and ask that you do recommend a veto and a remand to the Planning Commission. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, now turning to the applicants. I have no other appellant cards before me. Pamela Day, Ben Resnick is the applicant rep, and Neil Brower is also an applicant rep. However you guys want to, we have 5 minutes, and then each person could do 1 minute or do all three in 5 minutes, however you guys want.
Can Ms. Day just speak as a public speaker? So we'll
sure, that'd be 1 minute for her, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Neil Brower, Jeffrey Mangles, Butler and Mitchell, representing the applicant Crimson. As you've heard before you, what you have here is a density bonus project that is subject to certain and very straightforward legal protections. You've just heard the urgings of both the appellant and the council office that site plan review would represent a convenient end run around state law. But there are a couple of problems with that, and the first is the density bonus law itself, which expressly states that in most circumstances, you cannot find that the product of the density bonus, the extra FAR, extra height, things like that, represent significant impacts under CEQA. But there are also two other state laws that reject the grounds that council office and that appellants urge, and that is SB State Bill 743, Senate Bill 744. Senate Bill 743 provides that for projects within transit priority areas, and this is one, and it's designated by the city and it's designated by the Southern California Association of Governments, projects within those, CEQA cannot find that you have significant impacts on the basis of aesthetics, on the basis of parking, on the basis of greenhouse gas. Further, Senate Bill 744 actually forbids the city from imposing a higher parking ratio than half a space, per unit. And in this case, the project provides more than the number of those spaces voluntarily. So as it stands, the city would, in doing what appellants and in doing what the council office urges, violate no fewer than 3 state laws, and all of this within the context of a statutory exemption that also applies to the project that would render the mitigated negative declaration absolutely moot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ben Resnick with Jeffrey Mangles, Butler, and Mitchell. Let me pick up on the statutory exemption my colleague mentioned under SB 375. We have applied for a statutory exemption for this project under state law. That application has been pending for months. We are told that it has to be decided by the City Council. We asked that it be decided by the Planning Commission, but we were told no, it goes to the City Council. We're told that the Planning Department is not ready today to present that, but it will be next week, June 6th. So first of all, let me explain. The statutory exemption is one that would take this affordable housing project and indicate that it is not subject to a CEQA review. It is exempt by law. What you're being asked to do today is to rush into trying to deny a project to avoid having to deal with what is pending right now. That would be illegal. And that would be a way to avoid providing affordable housing throughout the city, actually. This is one of the first projects to apply for the SB 375 exemption. So one of the things you should definitely consider doing is delay for a week so that the statutory exemption under CEQA can be considered by the City Council next week. That still gives you time to act under Mr. Bonin's Charter Section 245 motion. More importantly, as my colleague said, you'd be violating a whole series of rules and laws, exposing the city to liability, exposing the city to attorney's fees, because what you're being asked to do today is deny an affordable housing project that has no adjustments, no variances, complies with every rule, sits in a commercial zone with no height limit. It's on Venice Boulevard. There is no height limit. So where do you want to put density in this city if not on major commercial corridors that have no height limits? What's being asked of you today is to remand it back to the City Planning Commission, but that would mean you'd have to deny the project. You'd have to find that the Planning Commission, which unanimously approved this project and heard all these arguments you're hearing today, rejected it. And you'd be sending it back to the same commission that already heard all these arguments and rejected it. You'd be acting to effectively do what has been done for years by cities throughout the state when they refuse to apply the affordable housing criteria. You know, the density bonus law has been on the books for many, many years. But SB 1818 was adopted about 10 years ago because cities did exactly what you're being asked to do today, which is find ways to reject providing the affordable housing by saying you're too tall, you're too big, you create an impact, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why SB 1818 was passed, to take that away from local jurisdictions so we can get affordable housing built. Don't fall trap to what's being asked of you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela Day.
Good afternoon. My name is Pamela Day. I am the applicant, and I live and work on Venice Boulevard in Mar Vista. I am a neighbor and a part of that community. And this building was designed to be the poster child for transit-oriented development on the west side. We spent years now meeting with the council member's office and the neighborhood council in order to ensure that we took in as much feedback as possible while still building what this city and the state encourage us to build at the very place where they encourage us to build it. This is now, as of last Thursday, a Tier 3 transit-oriented center, which means this project could be 99 units and 73,000 feet, but it's not. It's 79 units and 63,000 feet, and we are bound by the laws of physics. We have to fit 63,000 feet into a cube. And while I would love to be able to stick units underground, we can't.
Thank you.
I urge you to approve the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have quite a bit of public cards on this item. Each speaker has 1 minute. I'll call 3 up at a time. Evelyn Hatt, Randy Freeman, Margaret Hoster. Welcome.
Evelyn Hatt, Mar Vista resident. This project needs to be scaled way back. It's way too high. It's got too many units and not enough parking spaces. Because it's close to rapid transit, it's allowed to have only half a parking space per bedroom. That's not nearly enough. Even though it's near public transit, I don't believe the tenants are going to be taking the public transit. The bus doesn't run often enough during peak times. And also because of the lack of parking, where are people going to park? They're going to have cars. Even if they do take public transit, they're still going to have cars to park someplace. Where's that going to be? In the neighborhood. And then the residents themselves are not going to be able to park there. I live within a half block of some apartments on Centinela of a much smaller scale, 15 units or less, and they all have parking provided, but they still park in front of my house, on my street, because they have multiple cars.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Randy Freeman, Margaret Hoster.
Good afternoon. My name is Randy Freeman. I'm a resident of Mar Vista within 2 blocks of the proposed building. I'm also a realtor by profession, and although I encourage development, I do believe that in this particular case it is misguided. I, for one, do rentals on a frequent basis and have found that there are more rentals now than there are people to take them. And many buildings that have been built recently that are mixed-use projects are sitting empty. So I'm finding that this type of project, especially in its present scope and in light of all of the extra traffic and in light of all of the parking, it's ridiculous to have a half a space, even if 1 space per unit, when these so-called affordable housing units that are going to be $2,800 for a single bedroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Margaret Hoster, Robert Schaefer, Catherine Schwartberger, and Howard Weisberg. Welcome.
My name is Margaret Hosier, and I'm a resident of Mar Vista. I'm opposed to this building for the reasons as stated by Alan Kirstein, a traffic consultant, and here are the 4. The ingress-egress traffic pattern is more dangerous than that of the existing commercial building without the consideration of the increase in occupancy. This wooden building represents a serious threat to itself and the surrounding structures, most of which are residential, and by its structure and the ability of the fire department to respond due to the above. In addition, an increase to the higher rise above 3 stories will only exacerbate exponentially. Venice Boulevard is designated as a principal tsunami evacuation route, which will make traveling inland all the more challenging and dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Schaefer. Catherine.
Robert Schaefer. I live near the proposed project. I'm opposed to it because it changes the character of the neighborhood for thousands of people. I'm also a owner of rental property. I support higher density development, but I believe this is just too much as it currently stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Howard Weisberg. Welcome. Catherine?
Hi, I'm Kathy Schwartfeger. I'd like to talk about whether this really is in a transit priority area. You guys have been given bus schedules. There is not during peak commute for either the 14 line or the 733 line 15-minute head during peak commute. So what planning did at the City Planning Commission was try to combine the local bus with the 733. Let me note that the Metro maintains those buses as separate for a reason, and that is because
A local bus stops more frequently and will get you downtown for work more slowly. I'd also like to talk about all the maps and hequats and waquats and stuff that they filed. The only thing by code that can be decided by one of those maps is a major transit stop based on the Southern California Association of Governments map. And as of 2016, their plan no longer contains major transit stops. That's the only thing the code that the state wrote would allow you to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Howard Weisberg, Joyce Keeler, Rosemarie de la Peña.
I'm Howard Weisberg. I own nearby rental property, and I'm concerned about the effect of parking spillover on tenant quality of life. I prepared a parking study for the area. It's in the file. 4 key findings. 1, peak on-street parking space occupancy is 99.6%. Complete gridlock and cruising. 2, a survey determined that the parking demand is 1.25 spaces per bedroom, 250% times more than the AB 744 mandate. 3, parking spillover will total 44 spaces, an environmental disaster for the neighborhood. 4, the city should sponsor a, quote, area-wide or jurisdiction-wide parking study as provided for in AB 744. My study is a prototype. The city needs to understand the environmental disaster that will be unleashed and will be allowed to create a local override to the AB 744 limits for future development.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Joyce Keeler. Then Rosemarie de la Peña.
My name is Joyce Keeler, and I've been a resident of Mar Vista for 30 years, and I speak in opposition. The following information has been previously submitted for the written record. The LA Guidelines screening checklist says, would the project include light blocking structures in excess of 60 feet high above the ground elevation that would be located within a distance of 3 times the height of the proposed structure to a shadow-sensitive use on the north, northwest, or northeast. In this case, that means that Venice Boulevard and the planned Great Street and its parklets and community seating areas and pedestrian-oriented small-scale commercial properties on both sides of the street are within 240 feet of the project. All are shadow-sensitive uses and will be shrouded in shade from the 83-foot building. LA Guidelines use of the tables previously provided as Exhibit A supports the finding of significant impact, but more to the point, the initial study and MND makes no shade analysis to provide that it does not have an impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosemarie de la Peña, Kenneth Frazee, Kathy Cleary. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Rosemarie de la Peña, and I've been a resident of Mar Vista for over 30 years. I felt compelled to speak to you today, as I did to the Planning Commission, about this proposed development because of the financial and emotional impact it would have on its employees. A fellow neighbor and I interviewed several employees who expressed deep concern about this possible change. There are approximately 40 employees who work there in different capacities and shifts. Most knew about this proposed development and were very anxious about where they would relocate. They all have families to support, and they are very concerned about the responsibilities for them. As an example, the DiCarlo Pizza would have to close permanently, and a Subway employee stated he would only get a 3-month severance check and stressed about that. The others simply did not know what they would do. I have returned several times to update the employees on this proposed plan, and each time I could see the stress expressed in their eyes. As you can see how disheartening these conversations were. We wanted to share these interviews with you to bring a human element to this appeal and ask that you please hear their voices.
Great, thank you very much. Kenneth Frazee, Kathy Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ken Frazee. I live 10 blocks away from the proposed project. In your material, you have a petition that was signed by 900 Mar Vista residents. This is the petition. We, the undersigned residents of Mar Vista, 900 of us, strongly object to the construction of this project. It will, number one, increase traffic at an already gridlock intersection. Number 2, it will cause a safety hazard with only alley ingress and egress onto Centinela and no adequate assessment of police and fire coverage. Number 3, it will be underparked. Number 4, it will displace more businesses than it provides. Number 5, it will be completely out of character with our low-rise, low-density neighborhood. The height and massing are incompatible with Mar Vista. Number 5, it will have a disastrous cumulative future impact. The city planning has not taken into account this future cumulative impact. Finally, it will continue a lack of responsiveness on the part of the City Planning Commission to our repeated concerns about this project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Kathy Cleary. William Cleary, John Stern, and Christopher McKinnon.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Cleary, a neighbor and a member of the West Mar Vista Association, and I oppose this project. While I agree that the project's impact on parking will be major on the nearby neighborhoods, its impact is even greater on the safety of the residents of the more than 1 mile radius surrounding it. 12444 lies almost in the center of the new Venice Boulevard Great Street of Mar Vista. I urge you to read the traffic analysis by a former LAPD officer included in a testimony submitted with our appeal. You will be terrified. The impact of this complex on the already congested intersection of Venice and Centinela will spread the congestion both east and west. 1 mile west at Beethoven Avenue, both I and my husband and the couple next door have nearly and actually been hit by cut-through drivers trying to avoid the long line on Beethoven waiting to get out onto Venice. The neighbors' cars were totaled and both had serious injuries caused by speeding and failure to stop at signs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. William?
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Cleary. I've been a Mar Vista resident for 42 years, and I am opposed to this project. I have given you schedules for the our MTA and Santa Monica bus lines, the 33, R733, and Santa Monica's number 14. And none of those buses run every 15 minutes as required for this project. Only the Santa Monica number 14 runs every 15 minutes between the hours of 6:25 and 8:22 in the morning. That is all. And the MTA buses are 16 and 17 minutes all day long. Thank you.
Thank you. John Stern?
Good afternoon. I've been a resident of Mar Vista since 1998. The applicant did not do a financial analysis of the project as required, so we did one. This appeal is in part against the granting of development approval bonuses, incentives, and concessions. We find that over $5 million worth of economic benefits granted by the city are excessive, unjustified, and unnecessary and should be rescinded. Further, there is no showing that the benefit bestowed by the city result in identifiable and actual cost reductions as required by code. We find that the developer does not need the incentives requested at 3.1 FAR or 3 to 1 FAR to make the affordable housing feasible from an economic perspective. That was what our pro forma addressed. We're not saying how big the building should or could be, and the 3.1 FAR is excessive by 24,000 square feet. And we thank you for hearing our appeal.
Thank you very much. Christopher McKinnon, Greg Tedesco, Lara Wahan. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and the members of the Plum Committee. Christopher McKinnon, I am speaking for myself as a resident of Mar Vista, property owner as well. I hope you support the council member and remand this to CPC. I oppose the project because it is out of character and the height will adversely affect the surrounding 1- and 2-story neighborhoods. I request that the Plum Committee start the process and ask help from the councilman to formulate either a CDO, community design overlay zone, or a specific plan for Venice Boulevard in Mar Vista 90066 to expressly include a review of visual resources, aesthetic character, shade and shadow, light and glare, and scenic vistas, even when a project is in a transit priority area. This review is allowed as interpreted by Department City Planning Zoning Information File number 2451. If a CDO or a specific plan with review is created, there would be no debate as to whether we would be allowed to discuss aesthetics of any project. The review should also include as an addendum to the Palms Mar Vista Community Plan immediately or when updated if it does not exist currently. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Greg and Laura Wojan.
Hello, Greg Tedesco. I'm on the Mar Vista Community Council. I rise opposed to the project based on height. The developer has repeatedly been told that the community is universally against this project based on the height transforming the nature of the community. The community is largely 1- and 2-story buildings on Venice. We're happy to have more density and more housing, but we do not want our neighborhood destroyed by having a canyon on Venice Boulevard. We don't want a Playa Vista, Mar Vista. We want to keep the nature of our community. I urge you to reject it based on that fundamental problem with the project. I think if she lowers the project a couple stories, it solves a lot of problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura, Drew Yaku, Mark Gladney. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Laura Wojan. I'm here to support this project. Councilperson Bonin has shown great leadership in his support for more housing of all income levels in his constituency, yet not in the case of this one building in his backyard. Appeals, motions, hearings such as these only make housing more expensive. It is your job as elected officials to show leadership and resist the pressure from this small but vocal minority that resists change in their communities, particularly when the change benefits those who traditionally don't have a voice, such as new residents and immigrants such as myself. Please set an example for the community and this divisive approach to and collaborate with the developer for the benefit of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Drew, Mark.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Drew Yaku. I'm a resident of the community. I'm here in support of the project because I know that the community is growing at a fast pace and we need more affordable housing in the area, especially one that serves with some commercial businesses, as we would like to see more economic growth as well. This is great because it adds access to Venice Boulevard and access to local transportation. We also want to make sure that it's towards the exterior and not putting any traffic on the interior of our neighborhoods. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mark Gladney, Keith Scripps, and Yvonne Nelson.
Afternoon, council members. I am a transplant to Venice, okay? And there's a tech company that's been purchasing all the properties in Venice that's driving up the rent, and the only area that's remotely affordable to Venice Beach is going to be Mar Vista. Santa Monica, forget about it. Marina del Rey, forget about it. So, you know, I feel that this project would be very beneficial to the new people that's, you know, coming to the Venice, LA area. In all the major cities that I've been in, traffic moves underground and above ground. Shopping is at ground level, and then the housing goes straight up. And with the influx of new people coming to this area, the housing does need to go, the buildings need to be higher. It was also brought up that a little bit, something that I did some research, that all the people that are complaining about this project, they have converted their garages into rooms or storages, and also found out that Councilmember Bonin lives about 500 to 600 feet from this proposed project.
Thank you. Keith Scripps, Yvonne Nelson.
Good afternoon. My name is Keith Scripps. I'm a resident of the area, and I just wanted to address the parking situation. That's my main concern. For 18 years, I've watched the parking in our neighborhood get worse. I live about 5 blocks from the proposed project, and they are proposing having half a parking space per unit, when there will probably be more than 2 residents per unit who own cars. Where is anybody proposing that all these cars go? We have very difficult parking situation as it is. We also have vans and recreational vehicles moving into the area now as Venice creates further parking restrictions. They're moving east into our neighborhood, further exacerbating the parking situation. So I would like to firmly say that I'm against this project unless they can get the parking situation in hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Yvonne Nelson, Holly Tilson, and Janu Knotts. Welcome.
My name is Yvonne Nelson. I live in Mar Vista and have been catching buses at the intersection of Venice and Centinela since 1983. Not only should that intersection not qualify as a transit priority area, as indicated earlier by earlier speakers, but the infrastructure doesn't exist at other times to encourage residents to rely on public transit. For example, I had a 2:45 Thursday appointment on Olympic Boulevard, about three-quarter mile east of Bundy. Without traffic, it takes about 15 minutes to do those 3 miles from that intersection. But regular West LA traffic, it takes about 30 minutes to drive and park. But by bus, that is a trip that requires 63 minutes. So I think what will happen is that residents will acquire cars when they discover the reality of the situation, and it's just going to add to a really severe parking problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Holly Tilson. I'm a resident of Mar Vista. I'm also Zone 6 Director of the Mar Vista Community Council. The Mayor's Executive Directive Number 1 was issued October of 2013. This initiative focused on developing great streets that activate the public realm, provide economic revitalization, and support great neighborhoods. The buildings along the great streets are 1 to 2 stories tall with an occasional 3-story residential building. This building, as proposed, is 83 feet tall. Her other building is 5 stories. They're going to stick out like a sore thumb. I prepared a panoramic view of Venice Boulevard looking towards the south with the building in the middle. And with a little flip, you can see how tall the building's going to be. The new building's removing 16,000 square feet of small businesses and replacing them with 2,100. The other building is removing all of them. The whole concept of the great streets is for small businesses. The city told us we can expect more, and this is just going to ruin this small business area. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean or Gianu Knotts, Laurie Christopher, Gabrielle Bajornstad, and Sherry Oder. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Jean Knotts, and I'm a Mar Vista resident. I live 3/4 of a block away from the proposed project. One thing that everybody's been talking about is the parking, and it is going to be a nightmare. It already is a nightmare in that neighborhood. But the affordable housing that they're talking about proposing isn't all that affordable when you look at it and when you look at what people are actually making who live in that area. That used to be an affordable neighborhood, which is why everybody wants to live there, but prices are rising so high and out of control, and most people who make maybe $3,000 to $4,000 a month can't really afford $3,000 a month in rent. I mean, that's just asking too much. And we do need more affordable housing, but we need something that the middle class can afford and not something that is just going to go for the poorer people. And quite frankly, I don't know how they're going to afford $2,800 a month. Thank you.
Thank you. Laurie Christopher, Gabrielle Bajornstad.
My name is Laurie Christopher. I've been a resident of Mar Vista since 2010, and I own a home about a half a mile from the proposed development. I strongly oppose this project as designed, and I support the appeal, and I support Councilman Bonin's efforts to send it back for veto and remand. for a variety of reasons that have already been discussed, so I won't belabor the point. I do want to, though, bring up the fact that the applicant keeps mentioning affordable housing. I applaud the 7 very low-income units that are part of the development, but the rest of it is market rate. It's not affordable housing. Thank you very much for your time.
Gabrielle Bjornstad and Sherry O'Dare.
Hello, I'm Gabrielle Bjornstad, and I live with my husband about 4 blocks from the proposed project, from the proposed building. We are very much against it for all the reasons that everyone said here so eloquently. I don't have anything much to add except to say that yes, what they said, and that I was a bit disturbed by the lady earlier who said quite bitterly that we were a small but vocal minority. Well, if you look around, we're not that small. We've taken time to come in here. We've taken time to research this. We've taken time to sign petitions. And yes, we are vocal. That's because this means a lot to us, because we have a lot at stake, which is our way of life. We have no financial interest in this, just maintaining the way of life in Mar Vista that we very much enjoy. And I hope you'll take it seriously and regard how many of us there are and maybe listen to us, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sherry O'Dare. I'm a Mar Vista resident for 30 years. I wasn't planning on talking, but I'm infuriated by some of the things that I've heard. I'm not going to belabor any points. I just want to say that this Venice Boulevard can't sustain a 7-story building. It's just way too tall for the area. And by the way, I don't think $28,000 is low-income housing. Last time I looked, and I don't have an extra room in my garage, in case you were wondering. It's time that the council people remember who votes them into office. And most of the people, most of the citizens in the Mar Vista area are opposed to this. It will ruin the way that we enjoy the 2- and 3-story buildings and 1-story buildings in our area. And we would appreciate it if you would oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. Mr. Resnick, yes, sir. Not to say a speech or anything. No. Are you correcting anything that otherwise I would have to allow everyone to come back up and speak?
Yes, just a correction. Thank you, Ben Resnick, for the record. Since you're being asked, you're acting under Charter Section 245, I want to point out that under Charter Section 245, if there is an action which, quote, are subject to appeal or review by the council pursuant to other provisions of the charter ordinance or other applicable law, such actions are not subject to 245 review. I know you've asserted jurisdiction. There's a motion. But before you today is an appeal on this case. That's a CEQA appeal on the approval of the project. That's a CEQA appeal on the approval of this entire action.
Okay, got it.
So I just want to point out that taking action under 245, you don't have that authority or jurisdiction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. City Attorney, any comments on that? Do we have authority and jurisdiction as to the 245 today?
Adrian Corsani, City Attorney's Office. Let me just look at the charter for a second.
Okay. And in the meantime, if I could ask our CLA, or maybe there's a question for the City Attorney's Office. It appears that one of the reasons why Council District 11 wants to remand this to CPC is for the purposes of additional environmental review and some changes to the project. Now, this is through the statutory exemption for which this project was proposed. Under that statutory exemption, it exempts it from CEQA. Would additional environmental review contradict that statutory exemption?
No, my understanding is that when the matter comes before you as a 245, you hear the matter in its entirety as if you were the City Planning Commission hearing it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Adrian Corsani, City Attorney's Office. Without commenting on Mr. Resnick's comment, which I will have to further research, the matters that are before you, exempting any CEQA appeal that may or may not be a part of today's hearing, don't have additional appeals to council. So those are rightfully before you under Section 245. Under Section 245, you do have the ability to either veto and remand or stand in the shoes of the lower body. What you're being asked by CD 11 today to do is to make the recommendation to veto. I'll continue to research the comment that he made. If you make a recommendation to council, we can relay any additional information we found as to that point to city council.
Okay, good. Well, any other questions or comments? No. Given the testimony before us, we will, as with many other projects, oftentimes it takes some more discussions with local communities to come up with a project that makes sense. My concern here is that should we change these conditions, would these conditions as proposed by CD 11 disregard some of the reasons why we have legislation to support additional affordable housing through some of the statutory exemptions provided. But if that could be reviewed before it comes back, but nonetheless we'll support CD 11. I'll recommend that we support CD 11's request to veto the CPC action and remand it for further action. And that's our action here. Hopefully at CPC, the proposed changes will be taken up with, the proposed changes by CD 11 will be taken up at CPC. But again, I'm concerned that we shouldn't usurp any of the reasons why we have these statutory exemptions in the first place, and if that could be reviewed.
And your recommendations go to the entire council?
Yeah, it's going to the council, yeah. And then that'll be the action out of this committee, and it move to full council. Any objections? See no objections, so ordered. Okay, thank you. Next item, I believe we have two more items on the agenda. The first is item number 3, the citywide sign ordinance, and then we have public comment. So on item number 3, if I could just provide some comments as to where we are now, how we got here. And as many of you know, the council has wrestled with this sign ordinance for far too long, and we haven't come up to some sensible resolution by now. But I do feel encouraged, however, that over the course of the past 2 years, this committee has managed to identify a number of clear policy goals and implementation strategies based on all of the input we've heard from the members of the public, department staff, and our fellow council members. We've had several hearings where we've asked the departments to come back with information that we've gathered to hopefully give direction for a new ordinance. So despite our challenges with this matter over the years, I believe we are ready for our next steps. And it's become clear to me, and I believe several of our colleagues on this committee, that we need a comprehensive program principled in its policy framework and at the same time balanced in how it would impact our diverse range of community interests across the city. Our goals are clear. Number 1, we need to step up our enforcement capabilities. We have heard from Building and Safety in our previous meetings that we can achieve this by adding additional inspection staff. Number 2, we need to protect our residential areas. We have had the planning department advise this committee on how best to achieve these protections. Number 3, we need a public process to maximize opportunities for public input anytime the city considers proposed reductions. Number 4, we need to reestablish the city's position with the billboard companies in regards to the minimal contributions they currently provide for the thousands of existing billboards as well as any future billboards. And in the process, find a solid revenue stream that the city can use for much needed infrastructure and other citywide initiatives like addressing the housing crisis. The current arrangement just simply seems unacceptable as compared to other cities with similar frameworks in place. This coming budget, we have the mayor has proposed and the council has adopted a revenue stream of $10 million from any type of new billboard legislation. So we will see if that fits into whatever those projections are. And 5, finally, we need to reduce billboard blight in a significant way. There are over 8,300 billboards up in the city today, and we must do something about that. That said, I believe that we still have some details left to review. When we last heard this item on January 31st, we asked the CAO, Building and Safety, City Attorney, and Planning to all report back on a number of details. And so before I ask the departments to come up to speak, are there any other comments at this time by my colleagues? No. Okay, seeing that, if we could have staff come on up, CAO, the Department of Building and Safety, and the City Attorney and Planning staff are ready to present our last requests. So I understand that we asked the CEO to report back with comprehensive fiscal impacts analysis relevant to the implementation of the policy framework currently under consideration by PLUM, including but not limited to the necessary funding for planning's sign unit, building and safety enforcement upgrades, related processing and administration functions, and viable options for securing future funding. We also asked the Building and Safety Department, with assistance from planning, to report back with the analysis of code amendments necessary to allow vinyl replacement of the berry blue mural signs consistent with the option described by planning in the report dated 1/27/17. We asked the City Attorney to report back with clarification on the CEQA clearance requirements relevant to the policy framework currently under consideration by PLUM. We asked the Planning Department to report back on the location and status of sign district applications currently under review. So with that, welcome. Whichever order you'd like to go. Thank you.
Well, City Attorney here, mine's probably the briefest, so let me just elaborate on the CEQA issue. So we had sent you a report which, in sum, outlines how we would proceed, how the city would proceed on a CEQA analysis. Once the final ordinance is prepared, planning would have an initial study done, and if the initial study identified that there would be reasonably foreseeable impacts from adding, for example, digital off-site signs outside of sign districts, then it may be necessary to have an EAR or some other type of environmental document, but it cannot be assessed at this time until the ordinance is actually written.
Thank you for that.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm John Beesens from Building and Safety Code Enforcement, and we have looked into our codes, and there are currently no building codes that would prevent a vinyl replacement of the berry blue signs. However, there is a current prohibition against super graphics, and the building code does consider vinyl-sized billboard to be billboards and super graphics, which would not be allowed at this time. So that provision is in the way of converting the painted wall signs into super graphics.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Next on deck, Phyllis Nathanson, Planning Department. Your committee requested planning staff to report back with a framework for allowing on-site digital signs without being in a sign district and the location and status of pending sign districts. We submitted a report in March, and which provides that framework, and it allows it provides a framework for allowing on-site digital signs outside of sign districts, including property eligibility requirements, development and operational standards, and process options. And also the report explained that there were 9 sign districts pending. However, last week an additional sign district was approved, so there would be a remaining 8 sign districts pending.
Okay. Thank you. And then the CAO has the bulk of the report back.
Good afternoon. Jason Kleen, Office of the City Administrative Officer. Our office submitted a report at the end of March, which identified that approximately $1.5 million would be needed to fund the positions in city planning and the Department of Building and Safety. The Department of City Planning currently has 6 positions that are unfunded that would be dedicated for the creation of a sign unit. The filling of those positions, as well as any fees associated with the relocation agreements and the processing for the conversion of signs from static to digital, would be done once we have a policy decision made and we know what's going to go into those relocation agreements. The committee also asked for the necessary resources for building and safety to hire additional building mechanical inspectors to do inspections of any of the existing signs signs as well as the signs that were converted under the relocation agreement. The Department of Building and Safety does not currently have positions. However, our office did recommend giving them resolution authority in our October report, and the committee did adopt those recommendations. They just haven't been submitted to council for approval yet. The department does have as needed authority for building mechanical inspectors. So if a policy decision was made before the positions were allocated, we could look to utilize those position authorities in advance of actually filling full-time positions. Revenue generated would really be dependent on whether or not the committee adopted a set menu of takedown ratios. Our office recommended allowing for takedown ratios ranging from 9-to-1 to 2-to-1. Anything less than 9-to-1 would have a corresponding in lieu payment. The earlier report from November of last year gave the ratio for the standard bulletin format, which is the 672 format, which had the 8-to-1 takedown ratio at approximately $25,000, going all the way down to the 2-to-1 ratio, which had a corresponding annual payment of $250,000. Assuming you wanted a robust takedown ratio, annual in lieu payments could range from low millions to in excess of $10 million, depending on the number of participants. When we looked at the analysis, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 locations could be utilized for the digital conversion. A lot of those are along the major corridors and thoroughfares of the city. It really would depend on whether or not you had the buffers from residential use and whether or not those corridors would be available for use. And we anticipated that by providing billboard companies with the opportunity to take down signs outside of the area where the sign was going to be relocated would enable signs to come down in areas of the city where digital billboards may actually not go up. So we could see a net reduction in the basin area of digital billboards or static billboards in lieu of some of these digital billboards going up in major commercial corridors.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Well, let me start off by asking of the $1.5 million that you've identified that we may need, have you anticipated what revenue source that may come from?
We anticipate that the building and safety positions would probably be funded from the city planning case processing fund as an associated use with the city planning fees that would be charged for the relocation agreements, and those would be new fees that would be brought before the committee.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Englander?
It was brought up earlier that the in the budget that was approved, there was about $12 million for 6-month funding and revenue. Where do you attribute that specifically to?
The line item was actually put in the Department of General Services budget. So the assumption is that the city would move forward with at least a public policy option to allow for billboards to be relocated onto city properties, and then that would be rental payments from the billboard companies on those properties.
Right.
So that's primarily from public property rentals?
Correct.
The money that you've identified there? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And why wasn't any, I mean, I don't know if you can answer this, why wasn't anything assumed for private property?
The the private property option wasn't associated because the policy decision had not been made yet. It's kind of counter that we put it in on one side, but we didn't put it on the other. But there's a lot of unknown as to whether or not those funds would be dedicated to public improvements citywide or public improvements within the specified council district where the sign was being relocated, and which department those revenues would be attributed to.
I see there's more ambiguity on the private side, what the community benefits will be, what the revenue to the city, what the, versus on the public side, you know, you have more or less some data on the contracting side and what that would mean if you contract out, and made several assumptions there.
Correct, and we knew that in a financial status report, we could always reduce revenue on the general services side and increase revenue on the department that would be responsible for basically adopting the relocation agreements and managing that program.
Okay, so do you have the data necessary to evaluate what the potential revenues could be on qualifying public properties then, if you in fact put a number in the budget? Or do you need to do more research on that?
We need to do more research. We had done an RFP, a request for bids, to our economic panel for the Office of Economic Analysis, and unfortunately we did not get any responses to those bids. Therefore, our office is actually preparing a request for proposals to actually have a consultant come in and provide assistance similar to what Metro did on the Billboard issue.
But you do have information or extensive financial analysis, both in terms of the city's current revenue situation with the over 8,300 existing billboards. I mean, you have that information, correct, on the existing billboards?
Correct.
But what you will still need is some information on how we weighted towards reduction and other items. You need some additional information that once the council gives direction on what direction we're going, you'll be able to then come up with some numbers on the private side, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Englander?
Do you think it's realistic? 12 million was 6-month funding, assuming we actually passed a framework and an ordinance for the next, well, it'd take at least 45 minimum days, so plus council, plus recess. So you were looking at probably the next 60 to 90 days. That if we got that policy changed and updated in place, that realistically in 6 months, timing, we can generate 6 months of revenue off in this calendar year, in this fiscal year, or this coming fiscal year, $12 million?
Yes, sir. It's contingent on us being able to actually identify the number of city-owned parcels that would actually fall within whatever the prescribed land use allowed is, and then bringing forward a list of properties that fall within the designated locations, and then having council allow for us to do a concession agreement to put those locations out for bid. And then we'd have to, complete that concession process and bring it back prior to the end of the fiscal year for approval.
And under that, just that, what I'll call a limited framework in the big picture, because we're not talking about private and we're not talking about on-site, but just off-site digital on public only, to the city attorney, would that then trigger, what environmental review would that trigger?
Well, you'd have to look at the policy document and the ordinance, and if it looked like it was reasonably foreseeable that you would be allowing a number of these signs, you probably would have to analyze that in the CEQA document.
CEQA document being?
Well, it could be an EIR, it could be something else, but,
Could be an MND?
Well, I don't know. I haven't prepared the initial, I'm not preparing the initial study, but when they look at that, that's something that you would think that they would need to analyze.
Right. So if it triggered a full EIR, depending on the size and scope, obviously that's what we're talking about, we still think we can generate in the same fiscal year 6 months funding?
If it triggered a full-blown EIR, no, we would not be able to actually recognize those revenues in the current fiscal year 2017-18.
Has planning done any initial sort of cursory analysis to make a preliminary decision based on just the city property alone of what scale that would trigger?
Well, we did look at a number of city properties, but we didn't delve deep to see which ones are appropriate for sign. So the answer would be no.
So not yet. So we just don't know. Okay. Do we have an idea of once we pass a policy, how long it would take to get that information back? Or is that still too difficult to say?
Well, it would depend on what the parameters were for an appropriate site. We don't know that yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for staff at this time? Okay, we'll go to public comment now. Our first speaker is Richard Spicer. There's from the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council. There's a CIS on file, so you have 5 minutes, sir. All other public speakers will have 1 minute. Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you very much, members of the committee. My name is Richard Spicer, representing the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council Board and its Planning Committee. Thank you again for the extended time that I'd understood was possible at the discretion of the committee for groups with community impact statements. And I appreciate the progress that's being made by the staff. I think it'd be simplest just to read this comment. As indicated in your agenda, we have been on the record, as this letter says, since about 2008. The Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Council supports an interim moratorium on digital billboards. That's A. B, prompt removal of all billboards consisting of that were put up without permits. C, prompt notice to neighborhood councils with sufficient time to respond to any proposed billboard. I'm not quite clear how the new ordinance is dealing with that. D, the City Planning Commission motion to study the safety hazards resuming from the billboards, and E, resubmitting the 2007 Neighborhood Council report, which identified billboards in each area, and glad to see the progress there. I think the most important thing, or three of them, is that the sign unit be created. It's encouraging to hear that's being considered and funded, with representation from Planning Department, Building and Safety, and city attorneys, that there be the notification to the neighborhood councils and resident associations so they have ample time to respond. And with that, I would like to conclude my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Marion Dodge, Patrick Frank, Ron Miller.
Good afternoon, committee. I'm Marion Dodge. I'm speaking on behalf of the Hillside Federation, the Los Feliz Improvement Association, and Friends of Griffith Park. We support the City Planning Commission's recommendations of October 22nd, 2015. We oppose any and all efforts to allow digital billboards outside sign districts. We particularly oppose any attempt to permit billboards on city property, especially city parks. The Planning Department's report of March 28th states that digital signs are not allowed within sensitive areas and even provides a 500-foot buffer around those areas. While it specifically defines national and state parks as sensitive areas, it does not include city parks in that designation. Are our city parks not as important as state and national parks? We think that they are just as important, perhaps more so, because they are accessible to people in lower income areas who cannot afford to go to a national park. We urge you to adopt the only ones who are going to make a lot of money off of billboards are the sign industry. Thank you.
My name is Patrick Frank. I'm the president of the Coalition to Ban Billboard Blight. I would like to talk about the idea of allowing digital signs on public property. There are a number of reasons for opposing digital signs on public property, but I'm only going to highlight two of them here today. First, the city will end up choosing winners and losers in terms of selecting who gets to advertise on city property. Companies can spend money and thereby try to curry favor with public officials, making those digital billboards a vehicle of undue influence. Two, a growing number of studies have shown a correlation between the presence of digital signs, driver distraction, and traffic accidents. The LA City may be liable if such a traffic accident occurs near city property where a digital sign is located. Moreover, the city has recently adopted Vision Zero in hopes of achieving zero traffic fatalities. Having digital signs on city property will work directly against this other city-stated goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Miller, Tommy Ford, Phil Brecht, Shane Phillips.
Good afternoon, Councilman. I'm Ron Miller, Executive Secretary of the LA Orange County Building Trades. We're here to support a comprehensive sign policy that includes both public and private signs on public and private property. This is going to bring the most dollars to the city's bank for a good, thoughtful policy. It'll also bring the takedown policy for illegal signs and signs on private property that don't belong there anymore, and allow for good sign policy in the city. So please move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Tommy?
Good afternoon, council members of the Plum Committee. My name is Tommy Favai. I represent IBEW, Local 11, and I'm here in full support of moving the sign ordinance forward. We believe that it is going to create really good construction jobs in the long run, and when it comes to public and private infrastructure. We urge for you to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Phil Recht on behalf of Summit Media. I just want to reiterate the points that are important to Summit and the other small operators with respect to digital signs. First, there has to be a realistic takedown requirement. Ideally 1-to-1, but certainly no greater than 2-to-1. Small operators simply don't have the inventory to spare like the city's 4 largest sign companies, each of which has hundreds, if not thousands, of poorly performing signs to take down, number one. Number two, small operators should not be punished for their inability to do significant takedowns. The $250,000 annual in lieu fee, which you just heard reiterate, the suggestion you heard discussed once again today, is simply unaffordable and will shut the small operators out of the market. A better approach is to require the small operators to make a one-time in lieu payment, or instead community contribution community benefits. If the city wants an ongoing revenue stream, $10 million or more from the digital operators, it should require that of all the operators and apply that equally across the board. Thank you.
Shane Phillips, Bob Smith, Roy Flehive. Welcome, Shane.
Yeah, afternoon. My name is Shane Phillips, here on behalf of Central City Association. We're also a member of the On-Site Sign Coalition. Use of on-site digital signs is very limited in LA to distinguish from other types of signage. They are not the main source of concern among the many stakeholders who have spent years helping develop these guidelines, and there is not a proliferation of these legal on-site digital signs in our city. CCA and this coalition supported Councilmember Englander's instructions at the last Plum meeting to develop a framework for allowing administrative approval of on-site digital signs, but unfortunately the framework that city planning has put forward is so restrictive that it would prohibit the use of on-site digital signs even for smaller operators on virtually every property in the city. We ask that this committee instruct staff to work with the business community and prepare fair and reasonable standards for on-site digital signs, and we would also suggest a bifurcation of the rulemaking process for on-site versus off-site signage to minimize the conflation between these two very different types of signs and allow a clearer process for each. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Smith and Roy, Rabbi Klein.
Mr. Chamber and members, my name is Bob Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Los Angeles New Car Dealers Association. At the last Plum meeting hearing, we supported the committee's instructions to the Planning Department to come back with language creating a reasonable regulatory framework to permit on-site digital signs pursuant to an administrative approval process. We are very disappointed that the framework planning came back with is so restrictive that it amounts to a blanket prohibition on the use of on-site digital signs at virtually every new car dealership in the city. Based on the allowable zoning limitations and the 500-foot minimum square foot frontage of the framework, only 9 of the 63 dealerships in Los Angeles would be allowed to have on-site digital signage. Surely this was not meant the intent of Councilmember Englander and this committee, and it goes without saying that the framework would virtually eliminate on-site digital signs from other businesses as well. We respectfully request that on-site digital be deleted or changed altogether. Thank you.
Thank you. Roy, Rabbi Klein, Can Matu.
Good afternoon. My name is Roy Flehive. I'm the Executive Director of the California Sign Association. As we've testified many times before, on-site digital signs are small, but a critically important portion of the signage that businesses utilize in the city of Los Angeles. We supported Councilmember Englander's instructions at a former plum meeting to develop a framework to allow on-site digital signs via the administrative approval process. He requested standards that would allow on-site signs as a limited use on properties meeting established criteria and without needing to be in sign districts. We are disappointed with the framework that planning put forward. It is so restricted that it would prohibit the use of on-site digital signs in most parcels in the city. On-site digital signs should be able to be utilized with proper time, place, and manner restrictions. Please instruct staff to work with the business community and professional sign associations and prepare a fair and reasonable standards for on-site digital signs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Rabbi Jonathan Klein from Clergy and Laity United for Economics Justice. Sorry, I forgot what I am. I just wanted to, of course, further the point that as we go back and forth on the particulars of this policy, the city is leaving a lot of money on the table. And from the perspective of trying to move an agenda of justice forward for the city of Los Angeles, we know that the dollars that could be collected, the revenue that's generated by the billboards being up and as robust as possible is real money that makes a difference in the lives of the people most in the margins and also helps to protect our budget, our city budget, so that we can restore services that have struggled for a long time. So I want to encourage as broad a policy that includes public and private space and that we do this as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Can Sarah Golden and Onisi Leff and Sarah Walsh.
Thank you, council members, for allowing me to speak this afternoon. My name is Khan Matu, and I'm a co-founder of the Hollywood Fringe Festival, a nonprofit and the largest performing arts festival in Los Angeles. Since our inception in 2010, with the help of billboards, we've been able to return over $1.8 million in ticket sales back to local artists and venues. In 2016, we completed our 7th festival where we saw over 56,000 seats filled, tripling our audience since 2010. In 2017, we will see 375 unique productions with over 2,000 shows performing all over Hollywood. This is in part thanks to billboards. As a nonprofit, we depend on the visibility that billboards provide to help bring audiences to see the new and exciting works presented by our amazing performing arts community. We believe the proposal before you is a good one. We ask the council embrace advanced technology in outdoor advertising that benefit both our neighborhoods and our nonprofit organizations. We appreciate the direction you are going in, and the Fringe and our arts community, thank you.
Thank you very much. Sarah Golden, Olivia, and Sarah Walsh. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Golden. I'm here on behalf of VICA, representing 400 businesses throughout the San Fernando Valley. The proposal before you is strong and it is time to move forward. In particular, small businesses rely on our city's billboards to promote their goods, services, grow their companies, and boost our local economy. An ordinance allowing digital signs on private and public property outside of current sign districts will ensure such success by putting neighborhoods first while providing our businesses with appropriately located and modern tools. It is important to note that on-site digital signs are a small but critically important portion of the signage that businesses will utilize. We support the development of a framework to allow on-site digital signs via an administrative approval process without needing to be in a sign district. We urge you to move on this policy and direct common sense legislation allowing digital on private and public property to be drafted so that our city's residents and businesses can benefit equally. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Olivia?
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Olivia Lee with the LA Area Chamber of Commerce. The ability to utilize on-site signs, including digital, is an important tool for business. We have worked collaboratively with city council, staff, and stakeholders for many years to develop time, place, and manner guidelines for these signs. On-site digital signs are very limited and are not the concern of stakeholders who've been part of these many years of hearings. There is not a proliferation of legal and on-site digital signs. We supported Councilmember Englander's instructions to develop a framework to allow on-site digital signs via an administrative approval process. We are disappointed the framework that planning put forward is so restrictive that it would prohibit the use of on-site digital signs in most parcels in the city. These signs should be able to utilize with appropriate time, place, and manner restrictions. We ask that you please instruct staff to work with the business community to prepare fair and reasonable standards for on-site digital signs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sarah Walsh, Arnold Ahrens, and Mary Stancourage. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Walsh, and I'm here today on behalf of the Motion Picture Association of America and our member companies to encourage the Council to take action to implement reasonable regulation of both on-site and off-site digital signs in the city. Digital billboards present an efficient and attractive opportunity for our member companies to advertise their motion picture and television shows. This technology provides a convenient way to keep advertisements current and up to date. For example, following a major awards ceremony or a highly successful opening weekend, a motion picture company can modify an advertisement on a digital billboard to reflect and incorporate the achievement of a particular film. We support an ordinance that will establish reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions for both on-site and off-site digital signage, and that will allow our member companies to take advantage of a technology that successfully improves the advertising of movies and television programs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Arnold Ahrens. I was hoping that this would be my final plum meeting, at least for this item. As a proponent to both on and off-site digital boards, both on public and private property, I strongly hope that this committee is aware of the growing frustration of the vast majority of attendees and citizens. It is the responsibility of this committee to complete the ordinances. The ordinances as presented to this point will protect residential neighborhoods by reducing thousands of unwanted signs through the exchange program and offer much-needed income to the city. Allow us to get on with our lives, complete the task. Digital billboards of the future. Please embrace it with appropriate rules and regulations so we may all benefit from this 21st century technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Stancourage, Nancy Friedman, Margarita Amador. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Stancourage, and I'm with Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. And I want to thank the members of this committee for all the work you've done over the last several years, and staff as well. I know this is a very complex issue with a lot of things to consider, so I want to thank you for your hard work. And I also want to echo the sentiments of some of the prior speakers to say that it's time to move this forward. There's a lot of money that is being left on the table, and there's a lot of opportunity for jobs and revenue for the city and support for some of our most marginalized communities. So I hope you take the time now to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Friedman, Margarita Amador, Maria Zaragoza.
I thought it was in order. Good afternoon. I think, how many people in this room have a cell phone? And how many people use a cell tower to make your cell phone better? Cell towers are going to be all over the city, and everybody appreciates them because they do something for us. They help us. But billboards, digital billboards, do not help us. They cause trouble. As a resident living in a district with the most billboard surface in any area of Los Angeles, we and our council member oppose digital signs and know that we are a prime target of the sign industry. Some considerations. This works against Vision Zero, which is the city's way of stopping pedestrian deaths. And also, there should be a carve-out clause for communities that do not want this. And LA should not be in the business of selling blight. Thank you.
Thank you. Margarita Amador, Maria Zaragoza, Gabriela Rosco. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Margarita Amador, and I am the co-chair for the Hollenbeck Community Police Advisory Board, and I'm also the president of the Park Advisory Board out of Pecan Park. I am here in support of digital billboards. I think they're a great benefit for our community because they will serve a lot of benefit in regards to outreach. I think for our parks especially, it's going to help promote activities for our parks. From a public safety perspective, it'll help, the police department greatly in, with our increase in our auto thefts, getting that outreach. This is the life is technology, and I think that's what we rely on is technology. So there's no better way of outreaching to our community than through digital. I strongly encourage you to take the advantage of this rare opportunity for a new funding source by allowing digital outside the limited science districts and in appropriate locations and on private and public property. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Zaragoza, Gabriela Roscoe, Chris French. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Zaragoza. I've been a resident of Los Angeles, Boyle Heights community for 25 years now. I'm here today to ask you to please move forward with authorizing LA's Billboard so that it will benefit all Angelinos, all neighborhoods. Neighborhoods through our city are in need of funding for projects that directly benefit the entire community, such as streets and sidewalks improvements, investments in our parks, and support for our youth programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Gabriela Roscoe, Chris French. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Gabriela Roscoe, and I am also with CLU, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. Thank you all council members for your time. I know it's been a long day, but we are here because we feel this is important. We feel it's important to spend our time expressing the fact that there are real people, as I've said before, that are counting on these jobs, right? I work with people that work 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet, and what's proposed right now is a sign ordinance that I am in support of, if I didn't say that, that would bring real good jobs to this community, real people that would be able to benefit from these jobs. And they shouldn't have to wait any longer for that to happen. And there's also the benefit of an additional revenue that goes toward affordable housing, right? And at CLU, we talk about Martin Luther King's idea of the beloved community, and many different pieces intersect to bring that about, but housing and jobs are 2 key pillars of that. So we urge you to move this forward to bring that revenue in and jobs to the people that need them. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Chris French, Irene Arellano, Reverend Andy Schweibert, Richard Martinez.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Christopher French. I'm from the community of Silver Lake, and I'm also here with CLU to urge you to speed up the process. I'm reiterating what all of the people have said that have been supporting this. We need to stop delaying this, the increase in public services and money for increased revenue. And with the threats of federal funding being taken away from LA for our righteous and correct stances of resistance, this delay becomes even worse. Make the right decision and pass this ordinance right away.
Thank you. Irene Arellano, Reverend Andy Schweibert, Richard Martinez, Juan Barajas.
Members of the council, good afternoon. My name is Irene Arellano, and I am here with Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. I stand before you today to urge that you move this ordinance out of committee immediately for the benefit of our community. At CLU, we strive to build a more just and sacred society. It is in this spirit that I urge this committee to support this project to secure more opportunities for communities of color by securing good public sector jobs, support union jobs, speed up the process, pass the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi there. Reverend Andy Schweibert, thank you for your time. I'm a United Church of Christ pastor and also part of Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, also supporting moving this policy forward of the digital signs. And quickly, just want to make sure that we're taking advantage of the revenue that can be used towards good jobs for our communities and public sector jobs, and for jobs that are going to be good jobs. That are we know that the project labor agreements are in there that are guaranteeing good jobs for people that are putting the signs up and taking them down. Also want to say that that our faith communities and private organizations and nonprofits would love to we hope that this gets passed so that our churches and nonprofits can also have digital signs on our private spaces. And yeah, just want to make sure that the jobs that are supporting are created are supporting communities of color, particularly African American communities that are frequently left behind by the private sector. Thank you.
Richard Martinez and Juan Barajas.
Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I want to thank Councilman Weezar. I'm actually one of his scholarship recipients. Was able to utilize your scholarship at Boston College, so shout out to you. So I'm actually here in support of the ordinance. You know, there's numerous benefits that digital signage has for the community. Eliminates inappropriately placed billboards, billboards that are placed in residential areas, billboards that get abandoned and vandalized. So moving forward with the ordinance outside of the designated sign districts would be highly appreciated. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Juan Barajas.
Good afternoon. My name is Juan Barajas. I'm a small business owner in the city of LA. I've been a small business owner for a couple of years now. I'm here today to encourage you to protect our city's small business like mine, to depend on billboard advertising to compete with bigger corporations. Both affordable and effective exposure from billboard advertisement help us grow our businesses and attract new customers, strengthen our relationship with the community, and increasing contributions to our local economy. That's why small businesses owners like me stand in strong support of moving an ordinance that allows digital signs outside of districts on private and public property on drafting stage. Access to the billboards is a critical promotion tool for my business and that of the countless of my fellow Angelinos. I thank you for keeping the success of Los Angeles small businesses in mind, like myself, your commitment to action on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff? Colleagues, let me say a few words before we give some direction to staff on where we go. And our hope is that we move on this quickly. This has been lingering for a very, very long time. We thought we had a plan in place a few years back, but obviously we went in different directions with different ideas as to what should be done. But first, I want to thank our staff for their hard work on this matter. It is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of data that needs to be gathered. And I know they've been working for a very long time on this, so I appreciate all their work. And thank you to all the members of the public who have taken the time out of your busy schedules to come to City Hall to share your thoughts and concerns. And colleagues, I believe that our goals are clear. We need a sign ordinance that will significantly reduce billboard blight, protect our residential neighborhoods, improve our enforcement capabilities, and ensure that billboard companies contribute their fair share of public benefits in the process. The status quo is simply not acceptable on all those counts. For one reason or another, the issue of off-site signs has proven to be the most polarizing and controversial policy matter that I've been part of in this committee for a very long time. Nearly 9 years have passed since the initial council motion was introduced in July of 2008. That motion, yes, geez. That motion sought out to amend the sign ordinance and address the issues of billboard blight. I believe that we've allowed the disagreements to fester, primarily due to our inability to recognize that the issue of billboard blight means different things to different communities in a city as diverse as ours. I think this council has seen once again a vocal minority try and define what billboard blight means for everyone, and as a result, we've been going around in circles for 9 years trying to make sense of something that's nonsensical to the rest of us. The truth of the matter is, the city currently has over 8,300 billboard signs, the majority of which happen to be located in the most economically challenged neighborhoods. Just in the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 14th districts alone, we have nearly 2,900 billboards. If anyone can empathize with concerns over billboard blight, I can assure you that those of us sitting around the horseshoe here today definitely can. We live it every day as we travel our streets in our districts. I think we could all agree that having an excessive number of billboards lining our streets is undesirable, regardless if they're static or digital, if you live in Westwood or Watts. An approach that addresses billboard blight simply by prohibiting new ones from being built completely ignores the fact that we already have over 8,000 in the city. We must have a way to reduce billboard blight and reduce the number of billboards in the city. In the interest of addressing billboard blight, one has to start with the understanding that the overwhelming majority of these existing billboards are legally permitted signs that cannot be forcibly removed. The city does not have the legal authority to go and just force the billboard companies to take down their existing signs. Moreover, according to Building and Safety and the city attorney, we have about 500 billboards that the state's courts have deemed to fall under rebuttable presumption status because they've ruled that we can't present evidence that they are indeed illegal. So there's another 500 or so that we can't forcibly remove as well. If we were to pursue a goal to reduce on a net of 30% of the existing billboards and assumed a 5-to-1 takedown ratio, we would wipe out over 1,400 billboards. That amounts to nearly 1 million square feet of the current billboard signs seen along our streets. There are those who would contend that allowing digital billboards outside of sign districts would exacerbate the current conditions. I would agree if it were done in a vacuum, and all we did was just allow new digital billboards to be put up in addition to the over 8,300 that we already have. I think it would be an entirely different matter if we were to only allow new digital billboards if they agreed to a net reduction and also in non-residential areas, so that no matter what happens, the city will see a net reduction in the total amount of billboards. Additionally, we would rely on the zoning and land use regulations that have been recommended by the Planning Department in their previous reports and ensure that our residential areas are left better off than they are today. These would include the buffers from residential zones and distancing restrictions that have been suggested in prior staff reports. Illumination standards would be critical in the overall regulatory scheme and should be consistent with what's been previously discussed in terms of limitations on brightness, refresh rates, and restrictions on animation. And I believe these restrictions are already in place in the proposed ordinance that was submitted to the file by the city attorney in March of last year. With regard to process and public participation, we would require that any new digital billboard have a relocation agreement approved by the City Council, that any new relocation agreement application be accompanied by a public hearing to be conducted by the Planning Department and include notification to property owners or residents within 500 feet of the proposed site. Once a proposed relocation agreement and staff report are transmitted to City Council, another public hearing would take place on the matter in Plum. We must make sure that the residents have ample opportunity to provide input and communicate their concerns to their local council representative. And to the extent that the billboard blight issue takes on various shades from community to community, a disapproval by council of any proposed relocation agreement, including any billboard blight reduction public benefits, would eliminate any possibility of a digital billboard being established. It would essentially function as an opt-in program for any council district considering a relocation agreement. That said, we've been reminded by the city attorney on numerous occasions that due to the sensitive First Amendment protections involved in regulating signs, we must limit our oversight to matters of time, place, and manner. We cannot regulate signs in regards to content. And let's not forget that input that we've received from the Building and Safety Department over the years, and I want to thank them for their ongoing efforts with the OSPIP, or Billboard Inspection Program. We currently have a biannual inspection process, and we're looking forward to adding staff that would allow the department to conduct annual inspections in the future. This would mean more frequent inspections, increased responsiveness to complaint calls, and a research for the first time on those 500 or so billboards which are currently under rebuttable presumption status. It would be my recommendation that we move forward as a council on expanding the city's billboard enforcement capacity regardless of what happens with the citywide ordinance. Inspection and application fees would also cover filing the vacant positions for planning's long-awaited sign unit. We would ask Mr. Bertoni to assist in expediting staffing for the sign unit if we can ever get this ordinance resolved. I believe the staffing increases here are also in line with what we've heard from staff in their previous reports. And last but not least, let's remind ourselves that we also have an opportunity for increased revenues for the city. The issue of Billboard Blight becomes even more egregious when we recognize that. According to the CEO, the city currently collects on average between $580,000 to $700,000 a year in gross receipts tax from all these billboards. $580,000 a year for allowing over 8,300 billboards here in the city. Think about that. Whereas the city of Chicago gathered $15 million for 34 digital billboards in 2013 in 1 year alone. There are billboards in this city that generate over $1 million a year on its own. The numbers seem to be staggering, and the city is certainly losing out while we search desperately for resources to cover the most basic needs in the city. It would behoove the council if it were to turn a blind eye to our current and future financial obligations. While our needs and costs continue to escalate, our revenues have not kept pace. With additional revenues to the city coffers, how many more street segments would we be able to pave? How many more sidewalks would we fix? A new dash routes to get you around the neighborhood or metro station? How many more affordable housing units would HCID be able to fund? This year's budget discussions reminded us once again just how tenuous our fiscal situation continues to be, and now more than ever we need to be diligent in securing revenue opportunities for the city. So with that, I believe it's time that we put our differences aside in a meaningful way and arrive at common sense solutions that will benefit the most number of Angelenos, whether it's residents in Venice, Sherman Oaks, South LA, Koreatown, or Boyle Heights. We cannot continue to pretend that the thousands of signs already here don't constitute a real opportunity for billboard blight reductions and to secure much-needed revenues for the city. This committee, along with many of you here in this room, have agonized over years of discussions, report backs, and public testimony to consider what would be the best way for all our communities across the city. Informed by everything we've heard and discussed over the past 9 years on this matter, I think this committee is now ready to move forward with the most balanced and comprehensive sign regulations package to date. So with that, I would like to summarize some of the instructions we're giving to our staff to include in the existing draft ordinance that we have. We have circulated a document to the city clerk and colleagues in this committee. That's a more comprehensive directions to our staff, but if I could summarize here, instruct the Department of Building and Safety to report back in 30 days with strategies on securing immediate funding for 2 additional inspection staff as part of the OSPIP program, independent of any expanded fee program that may be associated with the proposed sign-in ordinance. Instruct CLA to report back with a peer review of financial analysis for a 1 citywide option and 2 a public option. The pertinent details are being provided to the city clerk by my staff in the hard copy, which I mentioned. Instruct the planning department with assistance from the city attorney to report back in 30 days with a determination on the status of the CEQA clearance document associated with the proposed sign ordinance once that is, the directions have been given. Instruct the planning department with assistance from the city attorney to prepare a revised ordinance that would authorize off-site signs outside of sign districts upon city council approval of a qualified relocation agreement or city contract in compliance with all applicable land use regulations, and one that includes findings for billboard blight reductions. The pertinent details are being provided to the clerk, as I mentioned. Instruct the planning department with assistance from the CAO to develop a citywide billboard blight reduction policy document that identifies policy goals and public benefit program components. Again, the details are in that document that we submitted. And instruct the CAO to report back in 30 days with a framework for the administration of funds in relation to the billboard blight reduction public benefits payments. Those details are in that document we have submitted. And finally, instruct the planning department with assistance from the city attorney to incorporate the on-site digital sign regulations consistent with the amended motion that will now be proposed by Mr. Englander.
Great, thank you very much. And with all due respect to the chair, the 9 years wasn't only trying to figure out what is and what isn't blight in the eye of the beholder. But I think this was the Full Employment Act for lawyers and lobbyists as well. There was a lot of litigation in this, and certainly much more so than most other issues. But with that, looking at on the on-site, which really hasn't been the biggest conversation, quite frankly, in the 9 years. It hasn't been the biggest issue from the community, but it certainly has been one where the businesses haven't felt necessarily a voice and didn't want to be left behind, particularly as it relates to a reduction for them as well. And so I would ask that we request the staff to prepare the changes as well for on-site. And while I want to point something out, a lot of the speakers that spoke in favor of some rules and regulations for on-site, and that's exactly what these are rules and regulations to protect the balance in the community, said that they were disappointed in the planning's framework, and I actually disagree with that. I think the planning department did a great job because that's what it was supposed to be, was framework with some modifications to it. I think from what we've heard and the feedback from the public and the businesses, this really captures what we were talking about. The framework that planning established in their 3/28/17 report back did a very good job of laying out the groundwork for thoughtful regulations of on-site signs utilizing digital technology. The committee directed the establishment of very strict but yet objective regulations to allow the on-site digital signage as a limited use. And that's the whole idea, is limited use, for only that for which is on-site. The applicants who wish to exceed these standards would be directed the planning process for relief. What I disagreed with was having a third tier, but I do support, and I'm asking for an administrative approval process. The regulations balance then the needs of the businesses, but most importantly, they preserve and protect the city's visual landscape and the characteristics of neighborhoods. So I'd ask that the land use designation or the zone, the general plan land use, must be designated as a regional center, commercial, regional commercial, general highway-oriented, community commercial, neighborhood office commercial, commercial manufacturing, and zoned commercial. That the minimum street footage property must have at least 150 feet of street frontage, and that sensitive uses for on-site digital signs cannot be within and must be at least 100-foot radius distance away from, as measured from the sign face, the following residential zones, state or national parks, ecological preserves, river implementation overlays, scenic highways. And then the on-site digital sign limitations, total on-site digital sign area, up to 75% of the property sign allotment be used for on-site digital signs, not to exceed a total of 350 square feet, with a maximum on-site digital sign size. No individual on-site digital sign may exceed 300 square feet in totality. The spacing between the on-site digital signs, the minimum distance between any on-site digital sign and another, either on-site or off-site, shall be at least 100 feet. Digital display standards. In terms of the digital display standards, that they be consistent with the illumination standards recommended by the City Planning Commission, which includes a nighttime limit of 300 per square meter. And then the on-site digital types, roof on-site digital signs, are also prohibited. In terms of the process, I'm asking for administrative approval, allow on-site digital signs that meet the very specific and strict criteria outlined herewith, and relief as proposed in the citywide sign ordinance has sign adjustments to exceed standards by 20% or less and sign variants to exceed standards by more than 20%. And the city should continue to require a property owner covenant which limits the use of the on-site signs to on-site messages only. This covenant shall be attached to the property record, can be utilized in the enforcement process if necessary. Lastly, we're asking that service stations be allowed to have their digital conversion for their integers. Those are the digital pricing signs at gas stations. Many have already converted to that, and so we want to make sure that that is established in this ordinance as well.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? No? Second by Mr. Harris Dawson. So the directions I've provided, along with the directions provided with Mr. Englander, have been provided to the clerk. To the clerk, if the public would wish to see those, how can they get, it's a public record, how can they get a copy of that?
I'm going to prepare a letter to the departments, and I'll include all those instructions.
Okay, great, thank you. And secondly, I just want to clarify that there's a draft ordinance somewhere in file land that this is being directed towards, correct? And so this would be directions to attach into that ordinance, draft sign ordinance. And third, does this go to council, or we get a draft ordinance back to this committee?
This matter can stay in this committee, and all reports and drafts will return here for another hearing.
Okay. Okay, so this will come back to committee, and once that's ready. Okay. With that, are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, so ordered with those directions as submitted by Mr. Weezer and Mr. Englander and seconded by Harris Dawson. So ordered. Thank you. Did we cover number 5?
We did, Councilman, but apparently there's a speaker's card.
Okay, I did not see that, but if we could reconsider item number 5, and we have 2 speakers' cards. If you could read that.
Sure. This is a City Planning Commission draft ordinance to make changes to the site plan review ordinance per changes in CEQA, and those bills have been enacted into law.
Okay. Briefly, we approved this on consent, I think, so just a broad overview of what this is.
Hi, this is Christine Saponaro from City Planning. Before you is just an ordinance for the site plan review, correcting this or making some minor corrections to the site plan review based on some state legislation that has been passed. The site plan review ordinance today is following the goals and procedures of the original site plan review ordinance approved in 1990.
Okay, great. Thank you. George Abrams and David Wright.
Hi, George Abrahams. The city's proposed amendment to 1605G is illegal because the city cannot piecemeal transfer some but not all of CRALA's land use powers and responsibilities. The city cannot be half pregnant. Under the Health and Safety Code redevelopment dissolution law, to act as the successor agency, the city must assume all of the CRALA's land use duties and responsibilities. The fragmented and piecemeal fashion in which the city is attempting to selectively transfer only some powers violates state law under the Health and Safety Code. Either the city accepts all of the land use authorities and liabilities from the CRALA or none. This half-pregnant attempted piecemeal transfer is illegal.
Thank you. Anyone else on this item that I called? David Wright?
We support him.
There he is.
Come on up, sir. You're up next. You're the last speaker.
Daniel Wright. It looks like David.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
Daniel Wright of the Silverstein Law Firm. Our office represents La Mirada Avenue Neighborhood Association of Hollywood, Society for Preservation of Downtown LA, and others interested in the city site plan review process. Our review of this matter is that if you look at government or Health and Safety Code section 34173I, it provides, quote, at the request of the city, notwithstanding section 33205, all land use related plans and functions of the former redevelopment agency are hereby transferred to the city. So the operative words are all functions are hereby transferred at the request of the city. To our knowledge, the city has not requested that transfer, and this proposal today to just take one little teeny piece of it and transfer it without the responsibilities violates that statute. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments on this? See none, we'll approve this item. And what's the direction?
To request the city attorney to prepare the ordinance.
Okay, we'll incorporate that into the motion. So ordered. Now that brings us to public comment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Puppet.
Yes, we support Mr. Abrahams. So, now we found out today that Monica Rodriguez was sworn in and certified. She's certified as CD7's winner. So Mr. Marquise Harrison made a deal with me, the puppet. If she's certified, she gets sworn in. So tomorrow, swear in Monica Rodriguez so she can begin her work in CD7 and put her on the plum committee because Councilman Cedillo is too sick to continue on. Yes, Monica Rodriguez would make a perfect committee member here for plum. She's so experienced, a very smart lady with planning. So swear in Monica Rodriguez tomorrow. Keep your word, Mr. Harris Dawson. And finally,
Herman?
Now that my big ears has listened in on the last item 8, modifications out of hand, they've been out of hand. Back when I was protesting against murals, paintings, and all this fucking blight, you dumb fucking schmucks allowed it. But yeah, we get Miss Walsh, the young woman, come in here and says, "Oh no, I like the signs because we get to put the gentleman's club on there." Yeah, so you can pimp out all those fucking white niggers, all those dollar bills. So 9 years of accomplishing nothing, walking backwards to fix what you made wrong. It proves a point. Sell out pimps. That's what you become. Sell out pimps, padding your wallets on signs, billboards, and all this fucking blight. Put Monica Rodriguez in her seat to take control of District 7 so we can get rid of the goddamn white nigger pimps like you.
Reverend Edward Anderson, are you here? No? Mario Fuentes. Mario Fuentes here? No? Marcus Allgood? No? Socorro Vasquez? Welcome.
Buenas tardes a todos los asistentes aquí. Mi nombre es Socorro Vázquez y soy de la organización LA Boys. Vengo de la iglesia Santa Teresita del Este de Los Ángeles, Boyle High. Y como madre soltera, para mí es me siento como decepcionada porque he trabajado 20 años limpiando casas. Y es duro pagar una renta de $1,000 cuando nuestro sueldo no alcanza para eso. Pero hemos estado luchando. Y les ruego a todos los representantes que se unan a este clamor de lucha. Le traemos a usted especialmente, concejal Wizard, estas tarjetas que se las vamos a hacer llegar para que usted sea un campeón en la lucha, nos apoye. Gracias, Dios los bendiga a todos, porque como personas de fe creemos en que ustedes van a hacer el cambio con nosotros. Gracias a todos.
Gracias.
Should I translate?
If you could translate, please, in 1 minute.
So she was saying, my name is Socorro Vasquez. I'm a leader with LA Voice. And I feel deceived because we've been here fighting and we haven't been able to talk about the rents. That for me as a working mother cleaning houses, I've been doing this for 20 years, and we cannot afford $1,000 rents in Boyle Heights. We need the council members to come together and consider something to do something about the expensive cost of rent. We brought here today 300 postcards, especially for you, Councilmember Huizar, because your community is asking you to do something about affordable housing.
Okay. And I would say, please sign up for my newsletter, and you would be up to date on everything I'm working on affordable housing. Glenford Felix, not here. Eric Ares, not here. Claire Wazana Meredith.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hi, so my name is Nara Kim. I filled out a public comment form.
I'm sorry, well, you have to wait until we call you.
That's fine.
Claire Wazana Meredith, not here. Sun Hee Choi, not here. Oh, yeah, okay.
Hi, good afternoon. 저는 한인 코리아타운에 사는 최선희이고요. 제가 여기 나온 거는 여기 있는 이민자들이 너무나 열악한 환경에서 렌트비가 너무 비싸니까 한 집에 서너 명, 3, 4, 15 패밀리가 같이 해갖고 부엌이나 이런 화장실 같은 거를 같이 쓰고 있고 그래요. 렌트비가 너무 올라갔고 그래갖고
So my name is Sunny Choi, and I'm a resident of Koreatown. I'm here on behalf of the Linkage Fee campaign because I have many friends and other seniors who are unable to find housing. There are many that live like 3 to 4 to a home, and thus it's very uncomfortable because they have to share one kitchen and one bathroom.
네, 그래서 시니어 아파트가 너무 부족하기 때문에 렌트비가 비싸고 그런데 또 이 사람들이 차도 없고 그러니까는 멀리 가지를 못해요. 가면은 마켓이나 뭐 병원이나 이런 데를 다닐 수가 없어요. 교통수단이 없어갖고.
There is a huge lack of senior housing, but also rents are rising. And these seniors, they don't have any cars, their transportation is limited to the metro, and so their community and their resources are really in Koreatown where they have grocery stores and the medical services in language.
그래서 정부 보조비를 많이 좀 올려주셔갖고 저소득 아파트나 아니면 노인 아파트에 좀 많은 사람들이 좀 혜택을 볼 수 있도록 해주시면 좋겠습니다.
And I hope that you install a strong linkage fee that continues to put in a permanent funding for affordable housing that will allow for seniors and residents of LA to continue living.
여기 현재 한 10년을 기다려도 못 들어간 사람이 굉장히 많아요. 저를 비롯해서 많은 사람들이 그런 불편함을 겪고 있습니다.
There are many people that wait about 10 years to file an application and still don't end up getting housing. So,
thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Sun Hee Choi? Yes, that was her, right? Okay. Nara Kim?
Hi, it's me again. My name is Nara Kim. I'm a community organizer with the Korean Resource Center. We're a nonprofit that services a lot of the seniors that come. We try to provide housing services, but many of them, even though we try and help them with housing, they're unable to find it just because there's a lack of housing and rents are too high for them. And so we've been collecting postcards on behalf of this campaign with residents that support a strong linkage fee. And so we have a stack for Councilmember Harris Dawson as well as Councilmember Price, and we'll be leaving them inside your office. But we hope that with seeing the support of residents, but also hearing the stories of many residents who struggle to live in LA, that you will vote for a strong linkage fee that will allow for us to have that funding and continue to have housing.
Thank you very much. Laura Raymond? Laura Raymond? Not here. Reverend Oliver Bull? Bui. No, not here. Ann Hatchell? Not here. Roberta Takahari? Not here. That concludes the cards that we have. You're coming up like I did something wrong. Did we miss your card? No. No?
Can I just address?
Sure. Can you do me a favor and fill out a card afterwards for our records?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
My name's Lisa Payne. I'm from the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing. I appreciate your taking the time and letting me come and speak. We had about 35 or 40 people here earlier today. We know the linkage fee is coming up next week, but we wanted to really let you all know that there is strong support throughout the city within your districts for a strong linkage fee. So we have been going to each of your offices upstairs. We thought we were going to be able to speak at the beginning in public comment, but when it was this late, we lost some folks, but we did had about 30 or 40 people in all of your offices, and we really urge you to understand our urgency and the urgency of these communities to pass a strong fee that will allow people to live with dignity and respect. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, we do multiple items in the beginning. That's for people who signed up for more than 2 agenda items. We do that in the beginning, then we save public comment for the end. Each committee does it differently. This is one that does public comment at the end, so I apologize for that. Any other business?
No, Council.
Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.